Hi, I'm Dr. Keith Johnson. I want to take you back to the moment that Jesus had risen from the dead and is now walking amongst the empty tomb that he's left, and he comes across Mary, who herself thinks that Jesus is the gardener, and says, "Master, if you've taken the body of my Lord, would you please return him so that we can give him proper homage after his death?" And Jesus, I want to bring you to the point where Jesus, talking to Mary in the 20th chapter of John, says, "Woman, why are you crying? What are you seeking?" Now, Jesus has just risen from the dead, and as always, I'm sure, he was very busy. He didn't have to stop when Mary talked to him. In fact, I'm sure he had many things to do. I'm only assuming, but I imagine if you've just risen from the dead, you have all kinds of things on your mind as to what you need done. And yet, when Mary approaches who she thought was the gardener, who turns out to be Jesus, instead of Jesus just going on his way, and she could have said, "Well, the gardener wasn't listening to me," but she didn't, because Jesus stopped. And he not only stops, but he says, "Woman, why are you crying?" Now, he doesn't have to worry about why she's crying. As I say, he must be very busy at this point. But he does stop, and Mary, who is left by herself, who is looking around frantically trying to figure out who stole the body of Jesus, now talking to the gardener, and Jesus turns around and says to her, "Why weepest thou? Why are you crying?" Well, the whole story is by itself enticing, but here's my point that I want to bring to you today. Jesus, busy as he is, concerned about what needs to be done in what is a very crucial time, his rising from the dead, stops and talks to Mary. And he doesn't just talk to her about everything, like how's the weather or where are you going or what's new. He says to her, "Mary, I want to know why you're crying. Why weepest thou? What are you seeking?" And if you go through the rest of the story, of course she says, "I'm looking for the body of my master. Somebody stole Jesus' body and I want to know who it was." But that part is not important to me at this stage. I want to talk to you about Jesus' concern for Mary. Out of everything that he had to do, he stops and he talks to Mary and says his main concern is to know, why are you crying? And you know what? That's the way he feels about us. I don't know why you are crying, but I know inside that you and I are weeping. We're crying all the time. There's things that hurt us. We're emotional beings, and there's a lot of pain that we have to face, and a lot of things we don't like. We lose our pet. We get lost in a crowd. We lose a lot of money, or some deal doesn't go through, or we're not making enough, or we wish we had this or that, or we've lost our parents, or I can go on and on with all kinds of things, all kinds of reasons that we are crying. But pay attention to this incident. Having risen from the dead and having to do all kinds of things that affect you and me already, when Mary talks to him from behind and says, "If you've taken the body of my Lord, please tell me where it is so that I can pay it proper homage." And Jesus stops and says, "Mary, why are you crying?" He'll do the same for you. I don't know what's bothering you. I don't know what kind of problem you've got. I don't know what your trouble is, what concerns you. But I know that Jesus cares about who you are. And he's concerned about why you're crying. And he wants to know where you're going and what you're trying to accomplish. All these little things count. And if you study the New Testament, you'll see that all these things counted to Jesus all the time. When he fed the 5,000, he found a little boy with a lunch, 3 fishes and a loaf. And yet he fed the multitude because he cared about that little boy. And he cares the same about you and me. He cared about Mary. He said, I'm concerned about why you're crying. Is there anything that I can do to help you? And what does he do? Well, we've got a hint out of Psalms, the 23rd chapter, the 2nd verse. He makes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. The only one who can heal your broken heart is interested in every tear you're shedding. He cares about what's happening to you, and he cares about where you're going and what you're doing. And he wants to help you. He has the ability to straighten out some of your problem and to give you the peace that you need. Peace I leave with you. My peace I give unto you, Jesus said. Not as the world giveth, give I unto you. Let not your heart be troubled, neither let it be afraid. Stop letting your heart be troubled. Let Jesus help you. Mary, stop looking for the body. You're talking to it. Young man, give your lunch to Jesus. Let him feed the 5,000. And making you to lie down in green pastures and leading you beside the still waters. Jesus sees himself as a shepherd, and he sees you as his sheep. He wants to help you. He wants to take care of you. Why is it important to lie down in green pastures? Because sheep are too dumb to find the green pastures on their own. And sheep walking by stirring waters will stick their nose in to drink it and aren't smart enough to pull their nose up from out of the water, and the water will go into them and will drown them. That's why you have a shepherd, and that's why you have a dog guiding the sheep, to help them and keep them alive. And that's why Jesus wants to be your shepherd. He loves you. He cares about who you are and where you are. Only the Savior can take the strain out of life and the fear out of death. Jude 24 says, Now unto him that is able to keep you from falling and to present you faultless before the presence of his glory with exceeding joy. We're not talking about just a Savior. We're not talking about just the Son of God. We're talking about your friend and the one who cares about you more than anybody else. Let Jesus love you. Learn how much he cares about you and understand the importance of praising the Lord by thanking him not only for what he's done, but what he's going to do. Jesus will stop you right now in the midst of your trouble and say, Why are you crying? Tell him. Tell him what bothers you. He cares. He loves you. He died for you. He rose from the dead for you. Now he wants to come into your heart and give you the peace that you need. You need peace? All you have to do is ask for it. There's nothing more that Jesus wants to give you than peace and forgiveness and grace. Let him have a chance. Ask him into your life. Let him give you the peace that you need.